Hello, students. We're going to go ahead and fill in the last column of our timeline. Some of you already did it in listening to my video the time before and filled in some things over here. You didn't have to. But go ahead and print out a new one so that we can fill in exactly what's here, and I can do it a little differently than I had before. But all you need is this column. So here we go. I want you to know that it's crazy how long the Enlightenment lasted. Almost 200 years, at least 150, where they were stuck in that intellectual, highbrow, aristocratic, lofty topics and silly satirical humor. Notice how towards the end of the Enlightenment, in 1776, we have the American Revolution. When you think about it, the American Revolution was actually quite civil in accordance with established rules and laws of the Enlightenment period. It was done by intellectual, mostly aristocratic men with a lot of philosophy behind it. All the rules were obeyed. It was gruesome, but put on your uniform, line up on opposite sides of a hill. This is how we do battle, kind of thing. The American Revolution followed the principles of the Enlightenment and what they'd known. However, in 1789, the French Revolution came along, and it was so different. It was so bloody and dramatic, and definitely inspired by the poorest of the poor, not by rich intellectuals. Okay? Go down to your box down at the bottom where it says cause of shift. From the Enlightenment into Romanticism, really the French Revolution sparked a whole lot as the world was shocked. How could we possibly do something that bloody and violent? Is that really what's in human hearts? My gosh, could poor people really govern themselves? Let's find out. And besides that, they were just sick of all that intellectual stuff anyway. So we go into a new time period called Romanticism. It has very little to do with actually romantic love, but it does have to do with emotions and drama. Okay, so I think it's a very fitting name for it. Interestingly enough, this is the era in which novels as we know them really took off. So your blank here for age of the novel gets filled in with novel. They really hadn't written books as we know them, novels as we know them. Clear back here in Elizabethan times, Shakespearean era, there was one guy that published Don Quixote that reads like a novel. It's about a knight who goes insane and starts jousting with windmills and things like that. But that wasn't really done. It's not what people did. But all of a sudden here, the novel exploded. Characteristics we have of the literature, my little happy and sad faces, that's because we could now talk about emotions and the imagination, nightmares, which was off limits and taboo. You just didn't talk about that stuff back in the Enlightenment. My little flower here says something interesting. In fact, I don't know why, but nature was now king. Romanticism was all about going back into nature, feeling one with nature. Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American romanticist, said, "When I go out into nature, I become a transparent eyeball. I see all, and the currents of the universal being circulate through me." A little overly dramatic. I think partially because by this time, a lot of people lived in cities, and the cities were awful, and they kind of lost touch with their original farming communities. So the intellectuals of the day took a look at that and said, we should really go back to a simpler life, be in tune with nature. Quite revolutionary for its time, although we kind of take that for granted. Well, duh, nature is cleansing and healing. That was kind of a new concept for them. Because there'd been so much shipping and traveling and a lot of books being printed and travel logs and information coming back from all over the world, really for the first time, people started to realize that there's more to life than just, sipping tea in their British homes. They started to become very fascinated with anything exotic. We're going to call it the supernatural. They heard weird tales of snake charmers in the Orient and Chinese astrology and herbal medicines, and it sparked their imaginations. Some of it was exaggerated and untrue. In fact, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes in the latter part of Romanticism, his first Sherlock Holmes novel is actually based on what he'd heard, hearsay, from early Mormon pioneers, and a lot of it is untrue, but to hear about this colony of Mormon pioneers going out to Utah and practicing polygamy, yada yada, it really sparked his imagination, and he over-dramatized it and put it into his book, as hearsay, and it's kind of interesting that he'd become fascinated by something that he didn't know firsthand, but it captured his imagination. This little man here with sparks coming off of him, it's because they were really taking a look at true democracy and whether an individual really can govern themselves, have an orderly society. And finally, my castle is because these people no longer idolized the Greeks and the Romans. Finally, people stopped worshiping them, and they started to look back at the medieval period to find tales of knights and quests and supernatural beings that now fascinated them again, and so they were rewriting a lot of medieval tales and getting really interested in kind of those gothic horrors, ladies swooning in dark castles and things like that. It was all the rage. The first novel, the first modern novel, except for Don Quixote and a few others, that we recognize as a novel, was published in 1817, and it's Frankenstein. Wow. Talk about the supernatural. It's written by a young woman named Mary Shelley. Frankenstein is such an interesting one because it makes such an interesting bridge between the Enlightenment and Romanticism. After all, the main character is a doctor or a student of medicine who gets obsessed with science and pursues it too far. He tries to reanimate, dead tissue and make a being, and once he does, it gets very emotional and then violent as the monster starts killing people and things like that. So what a bridge between the obsession with science leading to drama and emotion in a very dramatic horror story in Frankenstein. Bram Stoker came along and wrote Dracula, on the same vein, same kind of theme. What else do we? Oh, we have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This one I'm going to have my in-class kids kind of act out. We'll see what I can do for my online students to get you a feel for that novel. The young governess arrives at a home and finds a dark, mysterious, handsome, brooding man, and she starts to love him, but there are mysterious screams, and people keep trying to set the house on fire, yada, yada, yada. It's quite mysterious. Probably a few more. Oh, let's put in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. By Victor Hugo. So as you can see, very exotic, supernatural kinds of things. Over in America, you have Edgar Allan Poe writing his mostly short stories that are creepy, right? Telltale Heart, where he kills a guy, puts him under the floorboards, and he's sitting there talking to the police, and he can hear that heartbeat, and it finally drives him crazy. He confesses. You have The Cask of Amontillado, where some guy, they get in a feud, and the other guy buries the dude alive and bricks up the wall behind him. Good times. Okay, one more thing starts to happen, and that is people develop novel of manners, which we also call our Regency novels. And I'm going to have you write two things down. One of them is that novel of manners and Regency novels are all about finding love. These are romantic, but doing so in a very strict, rule-based society. So finding love in a strict society. A place where women were not really allowed to talk to men. They couldn't write letters to them. Men couldn't talk to a woman unless they were introduced first, and vice versa. They couldn't, they had to have chaperones. How do you find love when the rules governing your interactions with the opposite gender are so strict. The most famous writer is Jane Austen. She wrote Pride and Prejudice, I think in about 1830, somewhere around in there. Prejudice. There we go. Prejudice. The girl is too prejudiced against the guy. The guy is too proud to look at her as a potential mate because her family's a little lower class. There is a ton of witty dialogue, clever, funny situations, and really cleverly plotted. It's a really fabulous read, even if you're not into quote-unquote romance. You know, Elizabeth Bennet finally overcoming her prejudice to marry Mr. Darcy. So romantic. Okay, so take a picture of that and upload it for me so I can see you learned about your enlightenment. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.